hoping to do some more YouTube videos in the future based on photography, but more of an opinion-based kind of vlog, if you like. State of photography, where I think it's going, what I think is happening in the industry and the world in general. It's been a difficult couple of years for photography, I think, judging from what's been happening both in the pro industry itself, as in professional photographers, also the amateur or hobbyist sector has been seeing some downtrends, shown mainly in the fact that the manufacturers are struggling to keep their sales up. There's a few reasons for that. One, the most obvious of which I think is that they've been throwing different models of cameras at us for such a long time now. There comes a point where you think, right, everybody's got quality gear as far as their budget will take them, and you don't really have to spend that much to get some really good cameras these days. So why would chucking more and more stuff at us increase sales? Doesn't seem to make that much sense. There comes a point where everybody has got a decent camera, and you can't tempt them because the new model only offers small differences for your investment. And it comes down to, well, it's a little bit stagnant now because there isn't anything. I think they've pushed the mirrorless pretty hard, the manufacturers that have done it, and again, there's only so far you can take it forward because it gives you advantages that have limitations depending on your creativity and what you want to do. It's great to see you can take 10 frames a second plus. That's great, but how many times are you going to do that, and what sort of photographer is going to use that? If you're a nature photographer or a sports photographer, fine, but the general portrait photographer that I run into, the hobbyists on Purport, etc., who put their work on Instagram and other social media platforms, I don't really see the need for it. I mean, I'm still using an old style mirrored camera, and that doesn't hamper me 95% of the time. On the odd occasion, I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe a mirrorless camera would be handy, but that's more for the workshops I do. My day-to-day work doesn't really require sort of massive frame rates. There's very little that it would offer me. People like to buy cameras for the latest stuff, latest gear. That's great, but it doesn't necessarily push forward our industry, hobby, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure where the next revolution is going to come from. I have some ideas of my own. I think what we really need is something along the lines of my first camera, which was a Praktica. No fancy bells or whistles, mostly properly, fully sort of manual. If anybody knows what a Praktica was, it was basically a box with a good quality lens on it, interchangeable, that shot film. And your only way of getting your exposure or creating your exposure or gauging your exposure was a little needle in a viewfinder, which went to 0 when the camera told you it was kind of in the right area for exposure. The rest you had to work out for yourself, which in those days, using film, took some working out. I think the manufacturers would probably benefit from producing something for people who wanted to kind of study photography or be marked out as people who were not using any kind of automatic modes, not even aperture priority or shutter priority, really. Back to basics. Getting back into the grassroots photography where you discover everything without letting the camera really do it for you. That's how I learned. That's how a lot of people of my generation learnt. It's kind of why I think film's made a bit of a comeback, because people want to get back into the genuine grassroots of photography, and obviously film was a starting point. I have my own views on film. I'm sure I'm probably going to make a video about that in the near future. Mostly the biggest, maybe controversial point I've got is the fact that film is pretty much dead. It has no real reason to be as such. I have to kind of back that up. Not that I don't like film. I guess if I could shoot film for any reason apart from me wanting to process a roll of film, I would. I've got 2 film cameras sat in my cupboard gathering dust that I haven't used for over 15, 16 years. I keep them because they are nostalgic to me. But I know I can't use them professionally, not that would give me any advantage, just it would up my costs after all the investment I put into digital. And that's fine. I mean, you know, I don't think I'll ever sell them because they're just too personal to me. I do value them, but I have no real reason to shoot them. Digital photography has come so far these days that the quality of digital isn't an issue anymore. It used to be, I think. I can't remember the crossover. I'll do another video on that. But there was a point where digital overtook film. I was a purist. I was a film photographer when digital came out. I was a digital skeptic. Didn't want to know. It was overpriced, underperforming. The technology hadn't caught up. But at some point, digital overtook film in most regards. I would argue that the only reason why film is better, in inverted commas, is the experience, plus the learning and the whole process. People who there's lots of photographers who've never touched film, and they've missed out on a lot, I feel, because processing film and seeing your first print come up in a black and white tray is something I'll never forget. It was a kind of wow moment, and it pushed me into the photography world even more. Wanted to do it more and more and more, and the whole process was fantastic. But with digital doing what it does, and you don't need to do that anymore. I feel we're missing out on the experience part, but digital can be so much more productive because of the speed, the immediacy, and what you can do with it without having to spend loads of money on chemicals, paper, film, etc. Don't forget, even when I left film, I remember a roll of film was costing, for 36 exposures, was around £5. It would cost another £6-7 to have it processed, depending on where you took it. It could be more if you took it to ProLab, because they would do contact sheets and all sorts of things, and special, special processes, cross-processing, that sort of thing. And by the time you process one 36 roll of film, you're looking at £12 to £15 for 36 exposures, which back in those days we didn't even think about, obviously, because that's all we had. But now the 36 shots for we used to, back in the day, I used to gauge my shoots by how many rolls of film I was going to use. I would actually sell it like that sometimes. For a certain package, you would get 1 roll of film, 2 roll of film, 3, 4, 5, whatever it was, and upped it as the budget went up, so we could make sure we could give them something to go by with budget. They would understand that. Obviously, these days, this is what doesn't help the professional photographers in the modern world. It's the fact that you've got a memory card, you can shoot ad infinitum. There's no real stopping point. So it kind of devalues what we do. Because, they assume that you'll just keep shooting and you get it right. And if you take 1 million pictures, a few of those are going to come out good. Fair point, but that's not how professional should work. But yeah, anyway, that's another topic. Going back onto the film aspect, I get a little bit I don't know, a cross between a little bit riled and tickled all at the same time when people are saying, you know, I'm shooting film and this and that and the other, because it comes across as quite sort of, I wear it as a badge. It's like I've got my film badge, which for somebody like me who cut their teeth and worked on film for years and years and years, just slightly annoys me, because I don't know, maybe I'm taking an irrational view, but it's when I think it especially annoys me when they then plaster it on Facebook and Instagram and all the other photography sites and say, "Oh, this is film." Does it matter? Not really. I judge a picture. I personally judge a picture, or I look at a picture as the image. How you took it is almost irrelevant. If the technique is interesting, fine. But does film really have an advantage over digital? No. For you, for the photographer who took it, yes. The journey that they went through, the processes, and the craft to achieve it, yes, great. And for your own personal journey, that's fine. But to put it on the internet, having to scan it and redigitize it again, which kind of takes out everything you've kind of put into making it and turned it back into a digital image, seems just faintly ridiculous to me. I've got regard for people who take their film images and then put on a exhibition. Gosh, what are my words? We put on an exhibition so you can see the prints, or even a slideshow, how it's supposed to be seen. Because the biggest thing about film is, like I said, you may think I don't like film. I do. I love film, but only if I see the final product in analog, in real life. Because there is something about, say, a black and white print that digital can't hold a candle to, and that's the feel you get when you see it. It's so much more organic. Digital is brilliant, but you can always tell it zeros and ones. There is a sort of clinical aspect to it, which takes away a little bit of what I'm used to. I'm pretty sure that somebody who never shot film and came into the world shooting digital and still shooting digital would probably maybe not see what I see. But there's something about a black and white print, a good black and white print, that really kind of blows you away, because you can see it's made out of the actual molecules of the silver halide crystals and all that sort of thing, and the shape of the grain is irregular. It's not, it's not straight-sided. It's not little tiny straight-edge pixels. It's organic. It has that kind of sort of warm, almost sort of human feel to it. Well, that's something I love. So, as contradictory as I may be appearing, it's how I feel, because if you then take your negative or your transparency or your print and then scan it in and then put it on the internet and say, "Oh, I shot this on film," it's like, okay, well, if I can see it in real life, great. And if I could, I would, if I feel it's a good image. But what it boils down to for me is the fact that, is it a good image? If you take a mediocre image on film and you're kind of proud of it because you shot it on film, it's like, okay, not that bothered, because there's no excuse for having what I did when I first went digital is I used the digital camera. I didn't trust it. I spent $2,500 on a Canon, I can't remember, D30 was it, 3.2 megapixel camera. I was still shooting film at the time. This was sort of 2001. I didn't trust it, didn't think the quality was up to it, so I was using the digital as a Polaroid camera. So I was doing test shots with my lighting and everything else using digital camera, looking at the back of the camera to see how it was coming out, and then putting exact the same. When I got it right, when it looked right, I would then transfer the settings to my film camera and shoot it properly. That's how I used it for a further 2 years, really, because that was the time when digital was only just starting to appear and taking a foothold, and people didn't quite know how to treat it. It was fascinating. Being in that kind of era was, yeah, I guess it's a unique experience, because you don't often transcend something that's been happening in the same way for so long, then completely being turned on its head. That was fascinating. It was confusing. Everybody was learning. Nobody really knew what they were doing. One of my favourite little anecdotes was when I was working with a publisher, a magazine publisher, and I was doing I was producing an image for a cover of a magazine, and back then my 3.2 megapixel cameras was producing about 3 meg images. It wasn't massive, and I was shooting, this was my crossover period, this was really early on in my career, so I was actually shooting JPEGs, didn't have anything to actually convert RAW, wasn't using Photoshop. This was when Photoshop was around, but fewer people knew what to do. It was more used by graphic designers and people who were publishing magazines, graphic designers, to actually work on pictures to put into magazines. So actually it was less of a photographer's tool. And I certainly kind of didn't have access to it, didn't really want to use it, because it was all, to me, it was like black magic, something I didn't really want to get involved with, because it was like cheating. I can remember feeling that. And so I was shooting JPEG and using very simple software just to adjust contrast and brightness, and leaving it like that, because that's all kind of what I knew. So it was very important back then, even though I was shooting digital, to get it right in camera. So that's how I was trying to do it. And I remember sending the images to this publisher, and they sent me an email saying, "Oh, these are quite small files." I said, "Yeah, that's what my camera produces, 3.2 meg or something like that." And she says, "Oh, can you not do something about it? Because 8 or 9 meg sounds sexier." And that blew my mind. I tried not to laugh down the phone when she spoke to me afterwards. It was quite weird. The fact that the figures would make it sound more convincing. An 8 meg picture was sexier than the 3 meg image. So in the end, I think what I did was I got Yvonne, my wife, who was versed in, well, she wasn't my wife then, who was versed in Photoshop, to expand the size to make it fit what they wanted. Didn't increase the quality or anything like that, but they were quite happy with it. They thought I'd done some jiggery pokery. Turns out they didn't really understand either. So that was quite funny. But sometimes that's how these industries go, especially when they're branching out into new and diverse ways of working. But yeah, that was fascinating. Although I think I look back on it more with fascination now. At the time, it was just me scrabbling to do everything I could to get into the industry. Of course, being much younger then, I had more energy to do it. If you asked me to do it again, I'm not sure I could. I know a lot of the older photographers at the time went out of the business because not went out of business. They left the business because they felt their world was being disrupted far too much. They were shooting film, and they didn't want to use digital. They thought it was all kind of, they thought digital was the work of the devil, quite literally. And so they decided, so I was back then, I was one of the newcomers. I was one of the new guys. I was one of the usurpers, the rebels, the new breed, if you like. It's weird. I didn't see it like that myself. I was just coming into the industry, and I just wanted to get into it. I had all the kind of enthusiasm and the passion. I haven't used that word personally for a long time. I did. I so wanted. It was burning. It was burning inside me to actually go and forge this career for myself. And yeah, that was crazy. But transitioning from film to digital was something I could do then. If it happened again now, God knows how it would happen. I don't know. If it would ever happen, it doesn't look like it's ever going to happen. The industry has changed completely anyway. It would be much harder for me to start a career in photography now, and anybody coming to me asking for any advice on how to become a professional photographer, my first words to them, my response to that would be, are you sure? Because it's very hard out there. It's hard now, it's hard for me. It's not the same as it used to be, that's for sure. And you've got to work twice as hard for smaller returns or less chance of returns these days. That's the democracy of photography. Everybody can be a photographer. It's true. That's absolutely true. You have to accept these things. I'm not going to sit here and spout, oh, everybody shouldn't be a photographer, and it's all kind of filled with people who don't know what they're doing, and there's no point. There's no point. It's the same as the guys who left the industry just as I was coming into it. Probably viewed me as, I didn't see it at the time, but probably viewed me as somebody who was kind of one of the, young idiots who didn't know what they were doing. What's probably quite true, because I probably didn't know what I was doing at the time. But you got to start somewhere. I was fresh out of university. Got some lucky breaks, and you keep pushing it. Like 20 odd years later, how long's it been? 98 I turned pro. I was working for a studio in 98. So it's coming up to 22 years as a working photographer. Where did that time go? Not sure. Had a lot of fun though. I think one of the other videos I might do is actually a few anecdotes of what happened in certain shoots. Some fun, nothing too risque or weird, just very interesting shoots I've had the opportunity to do over the years. I might sort of break it down. There's lots of things I might do with it, but I might sort of tell the story and show you the pictures that came out of it, that sort of thing. Because the story behind pictures, I think, is sometimes more interesting than the pictures themselves. I like to think so anyway. Some cool things. I feel very privileged to have had the life I've had, and the opportunities I've had, and the career I've had, and being a photographer. I think when I started out, I thought, wow, being a photographer is a bit sexy. Oh dear. Nothing could be further from the truth most of the time. Okay. No, it's a lot of hard work, crawling on your hands and knees, getting dirty, dusty, doing loads of admin, trying to promote your business. Working with great clients, great. Working with clients who want everything for nothing, that happens a lot. Or actually trying to get business from people who actually don't want to pay any money. That's another thing. Maybe we'll cover that. Yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah, lots of things I really want to talk about. I think I've gathered enough experience and work history to be able to sort of pass on this wisdom of what to do, and probably more importantly, what not to do. Don't think I would have changed it for the world. I've met some fantastic people, gone on some great shoots, had some wonderful opportunities, especially early on, blagged a lot of stuff, blagged a lot of opportunities. But then I guess it's where you start. It's like when you're fresh out of university and you're starting in any career like this, where you don't actually need it's not like being a solicitor where you have to get all qualifications and get sponsored almost by a firm of solicitors to do professional qualifications before you can actually become a solicitor. This is something that anybody can do. I have a degree in photography, but I've never had to show that to anybody. It's not a professional qualification. It's just something I've done. I mean, degrees in photography can cover a vast range of different things. Mine was more of fine art degree, even though it wasn't supposed to be. there's another story. But yeah, so therefore you just had to look for opportunities. That's how you got to be. I think lots of photographers tend to think that you go out there and you just find work through the internet, through Facebook, through Instagram. And for some people, I guess that can work, especially if you know how to work things like Instagram that's big. I'm too old for that sort of stuff. But when I first started out, it was all about going and meeting people, grabbing opportunities and convincing people that you could do the job. Yeah. You got to be brave. You got to have some sort of courage, and you got to have the energy to do it, as well as the talent. I've not even mentioned talent yet, have I? I mean, I started out. This is the one thing I'll tell anybody. When I first became, when I was learning, when I was a student, I wasn't actually very good. There was one project, the one that involves my nieces with the cigarettes and stuff like that. You might have seen them, the pictures. That's what changed my life. That's what changed my career, because I suddenly realised it wasn't just about being technically correct. It wasn't just about getting images sharp. It wasn't about getting the lighting right, although that's very important. It's the meaning behind the pictures, and it's your viewpoint. I always tell people that creative photography, or expressing myself through photography, is a way of seeing. You know, a way of seeing, my way of seeing, my point of view. It's like how, I don't know, people tell stories from their point of view. That gives it, the story might be the same from two different people, but the points of view will be slightly different, or quite different, and that's what makes them good, indifferent, boring, exciting, interesting, or not. Same with photography. It's all about point of view. It's taking that stance, putting across a viewpoint. I learned very early on, that's one good thing about college, that photography is neutral. The actual thing, the actual art, the technique, everything is neutral. When you put a photographer behind the camera, it gives you a point. It's like journalism, which is really kind of a hot potato these days. Is there any such thing as a neutral story? No. Instant answer, no, because the person who writes that story has a viewpoint. As much as they're trying to be neutral, they are shaped by their own experiences, their background, their growing up, who they work for, everything. Even if they don't mean it's an unconscious bias. And it's the same in photography. You point a camera at something, somebody, apart from if you're a complete beginner and you're just making sure things are in frame, after you get to a certain level, after you get competent in the technical stuff, then how you take a picture, how you show a picture is your own personal standpoint coming. Okay, right. Wow, I rambled on for half an hour. Why do, here's another question for all those manufacturers out there. Why do they shut video off at half an hour? Letters on the back of a postcard, please. Anyway, yes, hopefully that's a precursor to what I may do in the future in terms of just talking about photography. There's a few other things I want to do. Might invite you guys to just send me images, so we do a kind of a video critique of said images. That would be fascinating. I'm sure that happens. I haven't actually seen anything on YouTube or any other platform where people do that for free. I'm sure they do it for tutorials and stuff, but something I would like to sort of put onto YouTube. Just anybody can send me images. I'll critique them online in a video and give you my opinion and where things may be improved, and how better to do things, or obviously kind of take the best things out of it. But I'm not there to just be an idiot. Right, that's the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Hopefully see you soon.